Hi, and welcome to my podcast, Every Day's a Train Wreck, where we go over the behind the scenes underbelly, if you will, of kind of the backstory of everyday life. So I'm Marley Major, and I have a celebrity-based event planning company in LA. And my livelihood is literally dependent upon making sure everything looks perfect, seems perfect, is perfect, and acts perfect. But as we know, behind the scenes, there's always so much more going on, kind of like one of those filters you put on things for Instagram photos, for example. And no matter how subtle the filter, there are always a lot of wrinkles that go on in the background. So that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast is we're going to talk about the wrinkles. So I am going to be interviewing celebrities, business owners, cool people from all walks of life. The key thing they have to have is they've got to have a backstory and they've got to be willing to share it. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a celebrity and you have to walk the red carpet at the Oscars, but guess what? You just found out your husband is cheating. The news hasn't broken yet on TMZ. So what do? You have to hold hands and smile and nod and act like everything is perfect. But just because you smile and nod and act like everything is perfect doesn't mean that it really is. And that's one of the things that I've learned in my career is no matter how white the teeth and how perfect the smile and how fabulous the injections, there is always so much more going on behind people's eyes. And we think if they're celebrities or if they've built these huge companies that somehow it's all good and they don't have any of this stuff behind the scenes. But I promise you, everybody does. So I have, as I mentioned, a celebrity catering and event planning company based in LA. I'm an international best-selling author. I got my business degree from Georgetown University. And those are all the highlights, right? I've built multiple seven-figure businesses from the ground up. Now, I wouldn't be a very good host if I didn't reveal my own underbelly, which I'll do in just a second. But I want to give you a bit of a backstory as well on my personal life. So I have three amazing kids, Cullen, Stanley, and Coco. And Cullen is fabulous and is engaged and lives in North Carolina. Coco is the baby. She's 16, a junior in high school, and pretty much thinks that everything I do is just absolutely the lamest. And most importantly, if it didn't happen on TikTok, it didn't happen at all. And then there's my middle one who goes to Ohio State. So he's a Buckeye, OHIO. And let me just tell you that I have had a run for the money. I've had a couple husbands, and clearly I'm not so great at that. But I have had a lot of success in life. But the one thing that I have also had is a tremendous amount of failure. And what I learned was that when I stopped trying to look like everything was perfect, and when I stopped trying to act like I had the white picket fence with the whole family and the matching outfits and the golden retriever who never made a pee-pee on the carpet, and when I showed the true story of my life and what was really going on behind the scenes, I connected with people so much more. So let me kind of tell you how it all started. So I grew up in Pasadena, California, which for those of you who know it, I would say it's very similar to Connecticut, or that's how it feels to me. It's like kind of a small town for the most part. And in a lot of ways, everything is just perfect here, right? There is not a Christmas card that is not absolutely perfectly shot, and everything just looks amazing on the outside. And so when I was 17 years old, I went off to Georgetown where I got my business degree. But this is where stuff started to get a little bit crazy, probably for the first time in my life, because I had like a very normal, great upbringing with two parents who were together, and all they wanted to do was see my brother and me succeed. So after sophomore year, it was the summer, and I went to Paris to study cooking and live in Paris and have a French tutor because I didn't really have anything that exciting I wanted to do that year during the summer. So I came back from that summer in Paris and I had an assignment for one of my business classes. It was a speech class, and I had to do a speech on what I knew more about than anybody else. Well, Georgetown, I'm sorry, like has the smartest kids ever in it. And at that time, I'm sure you're shocked, but I have ADHD. And at that time, it was not diagnosed. It wasn't diagnosed till way later in my life. So for me, at that time, every day wasn't a train wreck. It was like every day was a struggle. I just, no matter how much I studied, I just had the hardest time. So when I had to do this speech, I remember asking my mom, like, what am I going to do this speech about? Because there is nothing I know more about than these kids at school. Like literally there is nothing. And she said, well, listen, you just came back from cooking school. Why don't you do it on French cooking? Like there's no way they know more about French cooking than you. And okay, that was maybe a point. So I was headed down from campus into Georgetown. And in those days, you actually developed your film. So I was heading to get my film developed and I ran into my professor. And I was like, oh, okay. Of course, I was brown nosing. I wasn't even trying to brown nose, or maybe I was, but I introduced myself and I told her how I was in her class and I was so excited. And I was doing my speech on French cooking. And then I just blurted out that I had an interview with the chef from 1789, which I did not have an interview with the chef from 1789. And for those of you who are familiar with Georgetown or Washington, D.C., 1789 is a very fancy restaurant. And it has been there forever. It's like a block off campus. It's like the place that you go when, if you're lucky, your parents came into town and you got like a really nice meal out of it. Okay. So lo and behold, she is like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite restaurant. And I'm just thinking, oh my, what have I just done? Right. Remember, I'm from this like background where it's the white picket fence. I mean, I was not running around lying, and I certainly was not running around lying to a professor that I just had a course with. So I remember going home and I was like, oh my gosh, am I the biggest idiot? Well, I kind of am. So we know that. But I told my roommates, I was like, oh, I just told my professor that I have this interview and I don't have an interview. And for any of you who are familiar with chefs, they are notoriously, well, they can be notoriously difficult to deal with, and they certainly have big egos. And my roommate said, hey, listen, don't worry. There's this new chef from New York. He's not going to know that like he can say no to you, right? He's going to want to brown nose himself. So I was like, oh my gosh, all I need to do is just like take one look at him, like just meet him so that I'm not lying technically, on my resource section or whatever of my speech. So she sets this up, and I remember going over to 1789. Now remember, I'm brand new college. And so I'm all hair and makeup. And I remember being in this like blue suit. It was just hilarious because I was going to the, like 1789 is like a row house, right? And in a lot of these Georgetown places, it's like they have these kind of basements. So basically the kitchen was in this basement. It was not glamorous in the least. And I remember kind of going to the basement and being like, oh my gosh, okay, is this like I'm going to run into a mole or a troll or what? But here I am all tricked out, like eyelashes, ready to hit it and quit it and do my big Diane Sawyer moment. And I meet the chef and I take one look at him and I decide I need to marry him. Now, you'll get to know me a little bit better as the podcast goes on. But in the meantime, you need to know that when I set my mind to something, oh my, that train does not get off track. So here I am doing my interview. He's super nice, but the whole time I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to marry him and do the interview. And so I kind of am paying attention. Remember, I'm in business school, so I know sales, and I'm trying to figure out some kind of like find a hole and fill it thing that I can do. So I realized they have soufflés on the menu. Well, guess what? I just came from Paris. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to obviously pitch myself as a soufflé master. And number two, he didn't speak great Spanish and everybody in the kitchen did. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I'm going to be fluent in Spanish. Now, remember, I'd taken Spanish in high school, I'd taken it a little bit in college, but that's a whole other podcast. I had to really get good at Spanish. So I'm doing this interview and he's like, okay, thanks so much. And the whole time I'm trying to think like, how am I going to say that I need to come back? Like, who needs to do follow-up research, right? About a kitchen. So I somehow said I needed to come back, and he's like, yeah, right. I mean, sure. I don't think he thought I was going to show up, but of course I did. And I got to work there for that quote shift or observe, whatever it was I said I was going to do. And then I really was like, okay, I need to marry this guy. So net, I convinced him to hire me, and I started working 3 days a week. Now, remember, I have bad ADHD. I'm probably not the smartest bulb. I know I'm not the smartest bulb to start with. And here I am now working in this kitchen. So I would get out of class at 2:30 and I'd go to work 3:30 to 11:30, 3 days a week. Well, guess what? Since I am the most enthusiastic of employees, I'm picking up all these extra shifts, the whole deal, because I will always work, right? I want to see my future husband. So then, of course, he doesn't ask me out. I mean, all junior year, I've got more burns from these souffles than you can imagine. And I decide, okay, this is ridiculous. So after my junior year, then I spend the summer in Normandy going to cooking school again. And I plot the entire, like sometimes as girls do, I plot the entire summer how I'm going to literally ruin his life when I quit, because I'm like his best employee. I'm his translator. You can imagine. So I come back and I tell him, okay, sorry, Charlie, I need to quit. I have, too much with my schoolwork or whatever. And then he asked me out. And I'm like, okay, what in the world? So I'm like, how do you ask? Okay, anyway. So I was like, okay, fine. Now that was a very slow bloom to say the least. But again, that's the story of another podcast. But the point is, I'm a closer and I closed the deal. So the month after graduation, I got engaged. I am 21 years old. He is nearly 20 years older than I am. My parents are having a freaking heart attack to end all heart attacks. And what do you do when you marry a chef is you better be in the restaurant business with them, because otherwise you're never going to see them. So we ended up buying a building in Pasadena that had been this Irish bar for a million years. That's a whole other really great story I'll be happy to tell you. And we start construction, this whole thing. He and I get married, and guess what? He's running the back of the house. I'm running the front of the house. Everything is looking really great. We get all these newspaper articles written about us and, this Eastern super chef. And here I am, my goal for this was to do $1 million in sales. Well, guess what? Even I know that when you do $1 million in sales, you cannot spend 1.1 million, right? But I could not seem to apply what I learned in business school to real life. So guess what? Now I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid for sure. And, these are the days before Instagram, but if Instagram was around, it would look, I was presenting the Insta perfect picture, right? Like here I was young, I was married, I have this thriving 7-figure business. But at the end of the day, what I really had was a dirty little secret. And that dirty little secret was that I could not figure out how to get this business to be profitable and how to make money. And that is an awful feeling, by the way, especially when your whole livelihood depends on this restaurant and you're married. And the whole deal, right? And here we had gotten this guy to move from the East Coast, and now we're in the restaurant business for a few years. And I made a lot of mistakes, to say the least, that so many entrepreneurs make, which we'll be digging into some of those in future episodes. But just how when you're not making money, then what do? You think, okay, I'm just going to get some more business. Or then we started a catering company. We took over a banquet operation, but I hadn't solved the root of the problem, which was like, what was our overhead and our costs and all those things. And so, we're having financial problems now. It's just stress because remember, my family has backed us. And what does somebody do who's having major stress and financial problems and they work with their husband and it's not going particularly well is, hello, you get pregnant. So I did. And I thought, obviously a baby is going to cure it all. And thank goodness we had a very big and loud cappuccino machine, because that baby was going to have to come to work with me 7 days a week. So he did. And then cappuccino machine's going, cappuccino's kind of babysitting. Thank goodness we had a lot of customers who love that baby. But things continue to get worse. Well, now the universe is really sending me a message, and they're like, yeah, okay, clearly you didn't get the message or the point before. So now I have a really bad skiing accident. Okay. And I'm basically in a brace up practically to my hip, and I'm in rehab. I'm in so much pain. It's like a nightmare. So my dad now is like, oh my gosh, Marley, this is ridiculous. Like, why don't you stop? Like, we keep getting these offers to partner up. Thank goodness we own the land. And he's like, why don't you, this is nuts. We keep getting these offers to partner up. And I was like, no, I can't. I'm going to look like the biggest failure. Mind you, I sure as heck was going to look like the biggest failure. And there are going to be plenty of people who were going to be very excited to have me crash and burn. Because as I mentioned, I was drinking a lot of my own Kool-Aid. So I finally am like, okay, I surrender. We partnered up with this other restaurant group, and my dad's like, just do the parties. That's what you love. Well, I'm in a very bad point in my life, probably the lowest point of my life to date. Little did I know I would have a couple other ones, but I was like, okay, so fine. I'm going to do events. In those days, people didn't have, like, you had a wedding planner, or maybe a big corporation would have a planner, but it wasn't like everybody could just have an event planner. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to do the catering and the oversight and the rentals and all that stuff and put it all under one roof. So I was like, okay, what am I going to call myself? And I remember I'm super depressed and I am like hiding in my house eating humble pie. So I'm like, what's the best name I can come up with? Because at least I do have a marketing background. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call myself the Party Goddess. And I remember by this point I have a boyfriend, because I haven't learned my lesson to stay out of my own man train wrecks, but he is in the rental business and he takes me to an industry event, and he's like, okay, this is where you're going to like introduce yourself and your company. And I remember he took me to this event and I was like, he's like, this is Marley and she's got a company called the Party Goddess. And I was like, I think I'm going to just, when something comes out of somebody's mouth and you can see other people's faces. And I was just like, oh boy. And they're like, the Party Goddess? Like, what? Can you imagine these LA people? And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I will eat you for frickin' lunch one day. By the way, I did. But anyway, I realized I better make a success of this. And so I went off but how do you make a success? I was like one of 5 billion event planners. And so I thought, I need to get me some celebrities. This is how I'm going to do it. So I put on my vision board that I have these celebrities and I said it as if I already have it. Well, it wasn't like I had one next door. So I talked to my friend, and lo and behold, this is also something we can cover in an episode. I figured out how to get some celebrities. And then I ended up getting Britney Spears and Snoop Dogg and Pierce Brosnan and Gwyneth Paltrow, tons of them. And it was amazing. But guess what? I had another dirty little secret now, because I still couldn't figure out how to make money. Even though I didn't have the 100 employees and I didn't have all the overhead, I still could not figure out how to make money. Well, by now I'm on the husband number 2. I'm like, this is awesome. He's a CFO. At least I'm going to get some good free business advice. So now I write a book to solve my own problems. And it's called But Are You Making Any Money? And it literally is to solve my own problems. That's the whole reason I came up with it. And then I got encouraged to write a book, and I did. But I spent the vast majority of my career not making any money at all and trying to figure out my own way out of a paper bag, right? So here I am, married again, have another couple kids. My business, everything looks perfect. It looks like it's such a success. But guess what? Now I'm going to get divorced again. Okay, well, I'm Catholic. We just don't do that, let alone twice, let alone I'm not even that old to start with. Let's keep in mind. So now not only am I eating humble pie, I'm like choking on it because I'd kind of gotten my sea legs back. And I'm at the next stage in my career where I'm sort of like, okay, now what? Because I built myself up by that point again, right? Now I'd been in People Magazine. I had been in Wall Street Journal and the Robb Report, and I had all this amazing stuff happening. But I still was struggling in my personal life. And now I'm a mom of 3 kids, right? I should probably not even be a mom of 1 kid, but that's another story. Maybe we'll interview my daughter and she can tell you whether I'm right or wrong. So I find my way and solo. Later, I get text dumped on Cinco de Mayo by who I think is the love of my life. But that's really another couple podcasts. And I find my way. I figure it out. all along the way with many ups and downs. And remember, social media is a real thing. So many of them were public. But one of the things I learned when I worked with celebrity clients really is how they totally are just like the rest of us. So I would spend time with them, and then it would be the day of the event, right? And everybody's running around and you're trying to make sure everything looks perfect, and it's before everybody's taken the shower and, gets all fluffed up. And I can think of one A-list, like highest you can imagine. And there was so much going on with them in the background. Like there was a family member in rehab. There was somebody that was dying. And I just thought, wow, like they call them actors for a reason, because this person had to put up such a front, and they had no choice. They can't just say, oh, whoops, the party happened today and I've got all this stuff going on. They had to act as if it was all good. Nobody wants to just come to a party of 200 people and have the person crying. I mean, what good is that? So we've all had to do it. But I really realized that there is always so much going on with the backstory, and that the backstory is what's really interesting. Did that party go off great? Yes. Were they so happy? Yes. At the end of the day, they still have to come back to the fact that, the kid is in rehab and the person is dying, and on and on and on, right? So I want to tell the stories interview style of the backstory. Now, it's going to take people who are gutsy enough to raise their hand and say, okay, it's not all perfect, so that the rest of us can learn from that, right? Because no matter how big the train wreck, I actually think the biggest train wrecks create the most growth and the most lessons. So on this journey, I'm going to be doing this podcast every single week, and I'm going to be interviewing very cool, very interesting people who have a story to tell, the guts to tell it. And we will laugh, no doubt. Maybe we'll cry. I'll probably cry 100% for sure, just like as my own pity party, right? But this is going to be a fun place where you can realize, okay, my life isn't the only one that's a train wreck. Everybody else has got some stuff going on too. And no matter how perfect it looks, it isn't, but that's okay. And we're all in this together. So I hope you will join me every week for Every Day's a Train Wreck. And if you like what you heard, or you even think maybe you like what you heard, would you do me a big favor and subscribe? And then if you want to connect further, come find me on LinkedIn, Marley Major, and we'll take it from there. And by the way, if you've got a really freaking great story to tell, make sure to get in touch. Okay, bye for now. Can't wait to see you on the journey. Bye-bye.